Hello everyone, how are you? I'm going to ask you a question. What do you know about the Qatar crisis? Maybe not that much. But don't worry, we're going to explain you everything. The Qatar crisis was a diplomatic dispute involving some of the countries of the Persian Gulf. It started in 2017. During this crisis, even other countries turned against Qatar.
These countries were the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Egypt, and the last one, Saudi Arabia, which was the head of this movement against Qatar. The conflict started when Saudi Arabia attacked Qatar by saying that they were supporting terrorists and that they had a good relation with Iran, a country that Saudi Arabia doesn't like much. Also, Qatar's national network Al Jazeera was accused of showing things against them and started to create some kind of revolutions inside the countries. So, with these three things, the tension started to rise between the countries, ending with these problems.
But before, the Arab Quartet and Egypt sent a list of 13 demands so that the relation between them could stay as it was. They wanted Qatar to break relations with Iran, no support to any terrorist group, no military cooperation with Turkey, a country Qatar has a good relation with, no contact with political opposition referring to a political position of those countries, no meddling in other countries' affairs, the closing of Al Jazeera and other Qatari networks, reparation and compensation for damages caused by Qatar's foreign policy. Aligned with other Gulf countries, they had to answer somewhere between the next 10 days, and they have to have frequent additions. These demands arrived to Qatar, and they weren't received as great as the Saudi government would have wanted. These demands blocked Qatar's freedom and their sovereignty. So the Qatari government decided to refuse to those demands, alleging that they would not give up their sovereignty.
When Qatar refused, Saudi Arabia started to take measures against them. It started with breaking every diplomatic relations with Qatar. Then, all Qatari people living in one of these countries were given 15 days to leave and to return to Qatar and vice versa. The citizens weren't able to travel to Qatar and had to return. They also blocked the airspace for every Qatar airship and the seas for every boat. There were only two countries from the Gulf Cooperation that maintained relations with Qatar, Oman and Kuwait. So they imposed a land, sea and air embargo on Qatar, a country that relied on some of these necessities in one or many of those countries that cut relations. Mainly food, as most of it was imported and only 1% was local. They struggled at first with this problem, but Iran and Turkey helped them with it by sending food.
The market initially fell at 10%. Infrastructure companies were affected. The prices of sea trade raised due to the embargo and the complications it generated. Flights and connecting flights belonging to Qatar Airways had to be suspended. Foreign people living in Qatar were impacted, who represent 88% of the total population, so the people with work in other countries or overseas students were affected too. Qatari networks were blocked in other countries. Any pro-Qatar comment ended with the sending the person to jail, and the UAE suspended its mail services to Qatar. However, the embargo also created a benefit. It drove Qatar to become a more sustainable country in terms that they started to become more and more independent. As an example, we can take food. They invested money in making their own farms so that they do not need other countries to keep living. Qatar was gaining many new relationships and making stronger the ones already existing, such as what happened with Iran, thing which disturbed Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia was still believing that this problem was Qatar's fault, and because of it, they had to accept the demands to bring back the relations between the countries. One important factor that was damaging Saudi Arabia was its image. People all around the world saw the blockade and the demands they sent to Qatar. Some people may have agreed with them, but most part of it had a different opinion. This and the fact that they were mainly known for things like the lack of human rights, the lack of women's rights, among other things, generated a pretty bad image of them that started to affect.
Meanwhile, Qatar wasn't a major player initially, but it grew steadily through its foreign policies and relationship building. This enhanced its image, leading to new partnerships and the perception of Qatar as the victim in the ongoing political controversy.
Qatar's posture among these demands 2 years later was still the same. They still thought that they were against its sovereignty and that no other
Economically
country
speaking,
would
Qatar
accept them.
started to increase the
And in
natural
some
reserves
interviews,
of
they
gas
started
and
showing
petroleum
some
that
data
they had.
that changed
They
some
increased the
parts of the
production
story.
in order to increase the exportation they raised, and it was 33% approximately. With all that money coming and securing the economic part, they started to invest in other infrastructures. We mentioned farms, but also connection points such as the new port for the ships to arrive, turn into a more independent country, leaving to adrift all the other countries that needed Qatar. Their image wasn't looking good, but its economy wasn't holding as strong as they thought, while Qatar was having the world's most watched.
Problem.
So, economically speaking, Qatar was stable by the year of the blockade, and they continued rising and investing more. And also, a very important factor was the sense of patriotism that was generated since the blockade. Everyone loved the country. Sheikh, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. Until one day, the world woke up with an agreement between Qatar and the Gulf countries, meaning that the blockade was no longer and that the political relationship within the countries was going to be reestablished. There is no known reason why this happened, and several theories were made, but the truth is a secret.
During this difficult time, Qatar showed that it's a very resilient country, and that they are capable of maintaining its economy and also making it grow besides the adversity. Also, that they can be really good at creating relations with other well-established countries. They show what they can be and the intelligence they have to take their country forward against adversity.